You want to like him, but you can't.
Are you listening?
What?
Are you listening?
Did you bring me on this show to insult me?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all don't want it with us, man. You straight gangsters over here,
Straight
man.
gangsters.
Yeah, it's your boy coming to you live. Well, not really. This is pre-recorded because we're taking the night off. Unfortunately, we have too much going on in our lives. I know that Loudbeard right now is underwater squid wrestling while Loudbeard, sorry, not Loudbeard, but man with the golden mic, the Golden Ghost, he is at it again. He's banana hammock wrestling right now as we speak with baby oil, dudes in banana hammocks just wrestling it out, trying to decide who is the biggest Nickelback fan. So that's what those two guys are doing. So I decided we're going to record a little 30-minute episode of just Chris America. We might call Loudbeard. We might not. I don't know. We'll see how I feel about that. But I've been on Twitter the last couple of days, and we have Coach Peterson, the Washington head coach, started creating a little bit of drama with some of his compliments, or not compliments, but his comments on Alabama and their schedule, and just college football all around. This has been one of the biggest arguments since probably the BCS. Maybe it was before that. I don't know. I was 10 years old. Not 10 years old. How old was I? I was 15 when the BCS started in 1998. So I didn't really get into discussions with college football fans back then. And plus, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. But right around, I don't know, maybe 2006, when we started the big debate as to who should get in to the BCS championship. Should it be Florida? Should it be Ohio State or Michigan? Which of those three teams should get in? That's the first time I truly remember, probably because I was a Florida fan and it involved my team. Maybe in 2004 there was a big debate about it with Auburn being undefeated, not getting an invite to the dance, and USC routing Oklahoma. Not really sure, but this whole strength of schedule. Who has the best schedule? And we all put on our thinking caps, and we start thinking, wow, like, who has the strongest schedule? Well, this team is ranked number 5, and so therefore Alabama beat them, and Alabama beat a 5 team, and so therefore that is a good win. Even though that number 5 team really didn't play anybody, and that was their preseason ranking, and that's why they're number 5, and they've just played a bunch of Sun Belt teams and maybe an FCS team, and we just see this with all conferences. It's not just Alabama. It's not just the SEC. Ohio State will play one top team in the Power 5, whatever that means these days, and then they'll play a bunch of Ohio's and Tulane's and Tulsa's and just, some nobody schools like that. I think last year they played New Mexico or New Mexico State, or maybe it was Nevada. I don't know. They played some WAC team. I guess no, this Mountain West now. The WAC doesn't even exist anymore. But I digress. But what we have here is a big problem with college football, I think. And now we have UCF coming up. They've gone undefeated. They're 19 wins in a row. They're ranked number 10, and it's the same story, the same excuse that we give as to why they can't move up, and it's their strength of schedule. They're not in this mythical Power 5 where, you don't get to play this rough grind schedule of playing UNC, Duke, Virginia, Pitt, all these tough schools that really have garbage football programs. But they have Power 5. They play in the ACC. We know that that's a good conference for no other reason than just we said it was. That's all. And that's why Clemson gets to go to the playoff and not UCF. UCF doesn't get a chance because if you were in this conference, we'll just make up a record. We'll say you'll go 7-5. We put no thought to that. We have no football excuse as to why you'd go 7-5. It's just you're UCF. I've never heard of you, and I see Duke, and I've heard of Duke, and they go 7-5 in the ACC. So I just assume you would be like Duke, and you'd go 7-5. Even though if UCF played Duke right now, they would utterly embarrass them, just like they utterly embarrassed Maryland. They've utterly embarrassed Pitt. They would have utterly embarrassed UNC, who is hot garbage right now under Larry Fedora. But we need more playoffs. But people say, well, how can we have playoffs? There's CTE, and we don't play the players, and we can't play 64 teams. How can we get this done, Chris America? What is your answer to all of this? And I have a simple solution, and that is simply let's cut the fat on FBS. We need to leave FBS where it is. You can be the football subdivision, but now we're going to go and we'll just create a new division. I don't know what you want to call it. Do you want to call it, I don't know, the championship division? Or let's go back to just saying, hey, this is Division 1 or this is the championship league. Why not? We'll call it the championship league. There's football bowl subdivision, championship league, and football. I guess they have the football championship subdivision. We'll work on what we'll call the new league. But we need to cut the fat, and we need to get rid of a lot of football teams. There's absolutely no reason why Idaho or, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other teams that will just forever be bad teams. Like maybe Kansas. Kansas doesn't belong in a Power 5. They don't belong in, I don't even think they belong in the Sun Belt. Would they win in the Sun Belt? Their record says no. They'd probably still be winless. And we just need to come to a conclusion that football and basketball and baseball and all the other sports, hockey, take hockey, for example. The hockey conferences are completely different from football conferences. They're not the same. There isn't even really an SEC. Kentucky has a hockey team, but they're not in like major college hockey. So if we can separate college hockey and break them up into actual conferences that make sense for the sport of hockey, we should be able to do it for the sport of football. Just like the Florida Gators women's lacrosse team is in the Big East. If we can put the women's lacrosse team in the Big East, then we can move around conferences for football and have football conferences. But I don't want to go too far off the beaten path with this. Let's try to keep it as uniform as possible. And the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of Power 5. We need to get rid of Group of 5, and we need to slim it down to 4 conferences of 16 teams each. No, sorry, 4 conferences of 32 teams. Now you're thinking, Chris, America, how does that make sense? We can't have a conference with 32 teams. Well, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this. Maybe this is where we keep the football bowl subdivision, and your 32 teams are going to be broken up into 2 conferences of 16. So you'll have SEC Elite and SEC Bowl. We can call it that. How about this? We'll have the Elite Division and the Bowl Division. So SEC Elite, this is the conference or the division that plays for the national championship, sponsored by the NCAA championship team. All right? So that you're with me so far, right? We have 16 teams, okay? And then we'll take 16 other teams and we'll cut them in half and we'll throw them in the bowl division, and we'll get back to that here. So now we're going to go like the NFL. The NFL is made up of 2 conferences, 32 teams in the NFL, and they're broken up into 4 divisions of 4, and that's what we're going to do with SEC Elite. We're going to have 4 division of 4, and then we're going to break those divisions into 2 each into East and West. Hopefully that makes sense. So we have Division 1 and Division 2. That's going to be in the SEC East. Then you're going to have Division 3 and Division 4. That's going to be in the SEC West. Hopefully you're with me so far. So we got 8 teams in the East, 8 teams in the West. Those are broken up into 2 divisions each of 4. And here's my division. So Division 1. All right, I'm just making stuff up. I tried to group these up geographically. If you want to mix and match, you can. Don't read too much into this. I have Florida, Georgia, UCF, and South Carolina in Division 1 of the SEC East. Division 2, I got Auburn, Alabama, FSU, and Tennessee. I went ahead and put UCF and FSU into Division 1s and 2s because you needed 16 teams, and I felt like FSU and UCF just kind of made sense to add them to the SEC. If you want to add Clemson instead of FSU or Clemson instead of UCF, feel free. There's other teams in that area that you can kind of mix and match in. I can move UCF out and put Clemson in and maybe move UCF over to the ACC, but let's just stick to what I have here. So that's the SEC East. The SEC West, Division 3, we have Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi, and Mississippi State. And then Division 4, you have Texas A&M, Arkansas, Mississippi. Wow, I wrote Mississippi twice. No, that's Missouri. Sorry. So Texas A&M, Arkansas, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. All right, now you're saying, why did you put Vanderbilt in there? We'll get to that bowl subdivision a little bit later. So now I'm going to play a schedule of 10 games. I know you want your 12, but honestly, do you really want to see Florida versus the Citadel and then Florida versus Colorado State? No, you really don't. Those are two throwaway games that you won't pay any attention to if you're not a fan of that team. If you are a fan of that team, you're like, okay, yeah, I would want to see that, but you really don't. You like to see the stats get padded and everything, but we are not gaining anything from this 12-game schedule where 2 to 3 of those games are garbage teams that we play out of conference. They're useless. They are non-existent in our minds. If I don't even go out of my way to watch a Florida game, some days I work Saturdays at my normal job. I'll take Saturdays off for Florida versus Georgia if it's on at 3:30, or if somehow there's a game at 12. I'll take a day off for that. But if it's Florida versus Colorado State, I hit the record button and I go to work. I'll watch it when I get a chance. I really don't care because I know Florida will win 99 out of 100 times, and I know it's not even going to be close or entertaining other than just watching Florida players just look really good against bad competition. So I've made a 10-game schedule out of this schedule, and the schedule is going to be four non-conference games and 6 in-conference games. So what you got is, remember I had the division of 4, so that means Florida's going to play their 3 divisional teams. Then they're going to play 3 other of the other divisions. So 1 from Division 2, 1 from Division 3, and 1 from Division 4. And then we're going to force these conferences. So remember, we cut the whole entire league down to 4 conferences of 16 teams each in this elite division. All right? So this year, Florida is going to be facing the Big Ten, the SEC versus the Big Ten this year. And they're going to get 4 non-conference games out of the Big Ten, or 4 out-of-conference games out of the Big Ten. And this is the way Florida's 10-game schedule shapes up. Florida, week number 1, they have Ohio State at home. Huge matchup. Who doesn't want to see that? Who would not want to trade in Florida versus Charleston Southern to see Urban Meyer come down to Gainesville and play the Florida Gators and Dan Mullen, his previous assistant coach? Next up, they're going to go on the road. This hasn't happened since, I think, 91, when they went up to Syracuse. I think this is the last time Florida traveled anywhere outside of the Southeast for a non-conference game, and it needs to happen. I'm tired of it. As a Gator fan, I hate it. I want to see the AD grow some cojones, grow some balls, and go play some out-of-conference games on the road. I want to see it against the Big Ten. I want to see it against the Pac-12. I want to see it against the Big 12. This is what college football fans want to see. This is what every Gator fan should want to see. And Penn State as well. Like, what Penn State fan doesn't want to take on the Gators in Happy Valley, do a full-on whiteout? That Week 2 game would be off the hook. It would just be the shit, man. It would be great. So here we go. Week number 3, we got at UCF, their first divisional SEC opener at UCF. Let's settle this right here. Let's give UCF the $45 million media money, and let's see what they can do with it. They've done so much, and they've become so good with, I think, the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, gives them maybe $4 million a year media payout. That's how much each team gets. That's what they're doing with $4 million, guys. I mean, that's just with the media money. I don't know how much they're getting in donations and ticket sales and everything else, but let's just focus on the media money. Florida's getting $40 to $50 million in media money, where UCF is getting $4 million. And there have been several years in the last 9 years where Florida's been complete trash, that UCF is better than Florida with their $45 million. So let's see how good UCF can do. Everybody says, oh, you've put them in this conference, they'll go 7-5. Okay, maybe, probably not right now, but I could see them consistently every so often going 7-5 because they're not always going to pull in the talent. They're not always going to have the coach around. But if you give them $45 million a year in the middle of Central Florida, right in the hottest bed of recruiting, yeah, you're going to get a lot of different recruits, and they're going to say to Coach Frost, or now Coach Heupel, hey, don't go to that big school that's going to pay you $6 million a year. We'll give you $7 million, and we can afford it because, again, we're making $45 million a year in media money alone. So they're at UCF. Then they're going to go and play South Carolina at home. They get 2 conference games out of the way against their division. Then they're going to be at Illini. They'll play Illinois. That's going to be one of their other out-of-conference Big Ten. They got their game against LSU. That's from Division 3. Then they're going to play their yearly Georgia-Florida game in Jacksonville, the largest outdoor cocktail party. And then we got at Arkansas. That's their Division 4 team that they're going to play this year. Then they're back to their out-of-conference with Indiana. And then they're going to wrap up their schedule with FSU from Division 2. Now, I realize with this schedule, we're kind of eliminating a lot of rivalry games. And I think that's a bullet we're going to have to bite. We can try to get the biggest rivalry games in. Maybe we can get rid of UCF out of Division 1 and put FSU in there. And maybe we can throw UCF into Division 2. But I don't know. We'll just work on it. But this year they're going to play FSU at home. So I believe I got 4 away games, 1 neutral site game, and 5 home games there with that 10-game schedule. Now here comes the next part, and it's the playoffs. I have a 4-round playoff now, guys. 4 rounds, you're thinking that's crazy, but when you have 10 games, you can do 4 rounds, and now you're at the 14-game thing. How are we going to decide this playoff, Chris? You only played 6 conference games and 4 out-of-conference games. That's not enough. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start doing divisional playoffs within each conference. So round 1 is going to be the East divisions and the West divisions playing each other. So whoever wins Division 1 and Division 2 in the East, they're going to play each other. Whoever wins Division 3 and Division 4 in the West, they're going to play each other. If you want, you don't have to do East-West, East versus East, and West versus West. We can even seed these teams. You can say Florida is the number 2 seed, LSU is the number 1 seed this year, Alabama this year is number 3, and Texas A&M is number 4, and we'll play them that way. I don't care how you do it, but for just simplicity, I went with East versus East, West versus West. So round 1 in this mythological thing that I've made up schedule looks like this. Florida at Alabama. Alabama had the better record this year, so Florida will go to Alabama. LSU will be at Texas A&M. They'll go and take on our boy Jimbo Fisher out there, and just for S&Gs, we'll say Florida upsets Alabama and LSU beats Texas A&M. Both home teams lost. We've seen it sometimes in the NFL playoffs. It is what it is. Now it's time for round 2. So all across the country in the other 4 divisions or the other 4 conferences, they're doing the same thing that the SEC is doing. Division 1 versus Division 2, Division 3 versus Division 4, and that's going to be all round 1 of the playoffs. Then you get to round 2. Florida versus LSU. In the SEC championship game. That is round 2 of the playoffs, is the SEC title game. They'll be playing in Atlanta. The Pac-12 will be playing in San Francisco. The Big Ten will be playing in, Indianapolis or Detroit, wherever they decide to have it. And then whether or not we want to get rid of the Big 12 or the ACC, I don't really care. Both conferences are basically the American Athletic Conference without Oklahoma and Texas and without Clemson. And if FSU ever decides to be good again, without FSU, the ACC is really just a basketball conference. We know this. I know this. Let's just call it like it is. So those conference championships are going on, and we have a round 3 time, and I'm going to give it to my Florida Gators. I'm a Gator fan. This is my mythological made-up scenario system that I just came up with, so I'm going to make my Florida Gators the SEC champs. Now we go to round 3 of the playoffs, and we're going to have the SEC champ versus the Pac-12 champ. Again, once you get all of your conference championships, you reseed them again, and we'll just say Florida will play the Pac-12, and the Big Ten will play the Big 12, or the Big Ten will play the ACC. Let's make it the Big 12 because I feel like we can put, just geographically speaking, we can put the Big Ten can kind of take over that East Coast side that the ACC has. And the Big Ten is just a better name in football than the ACC is. It just is. That's why they make the most out of all media TV network payouts than anybody else. And that's just how it is. So the Florida will play the SEC champ, or Florida as the SEC champ will play the Pac-12 champ. And the Florida Gators are going to win because, once again, this is my mythological made-up scenario, and I'm a Gator fan, and I'm a homer. So let's say we beat USC. We beat USC in that round, and now we go to the national title game, and it's a Week 1 rematch, Ohio State versus Florida, Dan Mullen versus Urban Meyer. Week 1, Ohio State lost with a last-second touchdown, and now they want revenge. And then you can decide who gets to be the national champion out of that. I don't know who wouldn't want this over what we currently have, over Alabama is currently doing. If you're an Alabama fan, if you're a college football fan, why would you not want Alabama to play Ohio State? Alabama to go to the big house and beat Michigan at the big house, or at least die trying. Who would not want to see that? Or to have Penn State come down to Alabama, not at a neutral site game, but in Tuscaloosa in front of your students and play an out-of-conference game that matters, that means something. I would much rather see the Gators in Happy Valley than to see them play Charleston Southern. I'd rather see the Florida Gators go out to USC, play in LA, and do West Coast versus East Coast style. It would be awesome. And also in this, Notre Dame, you got to get rid of the independence crap. If you want to remain independent, then you're out. You can play in the football subdivision, that kind of thing. You be in the FBS with everybody else, and you can do it that way. Or you could just suck it up, get over yourself, and join a conference. Now, with that said, I told you to get back to the FBS thing, and I said we have a Vanderbilt. Right now, Arkansas, really bad team. Tennessee, really bad team. You might want to say, well, Chris, I feel like Memphis is better. I feel like Houston is better. Houston should be in that Division 4 of the SEC, and you're right. Maybe they should be. So let's say Memphis and Houston and two other teams win, and they're doing great and fantastic. Now we're going to have bowl games. So if you're in the bottom 4 of the SEC, you're going to play the top 4 of the FBS SEC division, the bowl division of the SEC. And you're going to have Tennessee play Memphis, and they're going to have to earn their way to stay in the SEC Elite, or they're going to get knocked down next year. If Memphis wins, then Memphis comes up, and they take over Tennessee's place in Division 2. If Tennessee wins, then Tennessee gets to skate on by. They get to prove that, yeah, we're bad in the Elite Division right now, but we're still good enough to beat the top team in the bowl division. And, yeah, it's just one game, but that's how it is sometimes, guys. Life's not fair. Just like we have a one-game series for the wild card to get into the playoffs of baseball, of Major League Baseball, and then sometimes, like in the basketball tournament, we have a one-game play-in series. It's just, it is what it is, and life's not fair sometimes. And sometimes the system's not fair. Nobody's going to be arguing if Florida has the best record in the division that they don't deserve to play in the first round of the playoffs against Alabama, who has the best record in the division. It's the same reason why we don't complain about, whatever team, let's say like Miami, they won their division, and the Patriots were 11-5 in 2008. And meanwhile, San Diego's out there at 8-8. They win the AFC West division. They get in. The Patriots are out. Nobody's really complaining. You might have a few complaints, but nobody is that upset that an 11-5 team got left out. Nowhere near as upset as, say, an 11 or a 10-2 Ohio State team or 11-2 Ohio State team that got left out last year. We're not sitting here saying, well, the San Diego Chargers got blown out by the Cleveland Browns, so they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. That's not how that works. That works nowhere else in any other sport do we say, well, you got blown out by this team, so you don't get to deserve to go to the playoffs. If that were the case, you might want to take a look at a lot of the Patriots schedules from the last few years. They do not do well down in South Beach. I don't know if they're going out to South Beach to party, get strippers, get drunk, snort some cocaine. I don't know what they're doing. All I know is when they show up on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock in Miami, they usually lay an egg, and they get blown out by Miami, which is usually a bad team. Nobody at that time says, well, the Patriots got blown out by Miami, and Miami's a bad team, and anybody who gets blown out by Miami doesn't deserve to get to playoffs. No, we don't say that because that's stupid. It is dumb. There's nothing intelligent about that. So I like that idea, guys. I think it would make a fantastic playoff. I think it would make a fantastic season. It would be far more entertaining. I'm sorry to all of the other teams out there, the New Mexicos and everything else. If you don't get in, you just don't get in. I don't know what to tell you. Build better football programs and everything, but the chances are you're just not. You never have. You probably never will, but it's not fair to schools like USF and UCF that are very young and they've built a program fast, while other schools like Vanderbilt have been around for hundreds of years, not hundreds, but over 100 years, and they've done nothing. They've done nothing to earn their stay at the SEC table in football. Do they have a great athletic program? Yeah, their baseball team is very good. their basketball team can play on the court with anybody most seasons. But that doesn't mean that they should get to play football and get their asses beat every single week, week in and week out, and then get to hang around and make $45 million a year because of it. Same with Kansas. Kansas, your basketball team is great. Bill Self has got you guys rolling, but your football team is trash. You've won 5 games. I think the last time you won more than 5 games was 2009. Really? 9 seasons and you can't win more than 5 games? And it's not like you're beating a bunch of nobodies and then just losing to the Big 12. You're losing to the nobodies too. Now this year you're doing good because you're beating other atrocities in college football, which is Rutgers. Don't get me started on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. They're also garbage. They need to be relegated out until they get their act together and put a football team that's worth a damn and can actually hang with the big boys. But you don't get a seat at the table just because you happen to be in New York, which honestly, New York City, if you're listening, do you really care about Rutgers football? Can you not find a Penn State game if Rutgers wasn't in the Big Ten? Yeah, you could find a Penn State game. You could find an Ohio State game. It's not like they're hard to find. And if the New York City market really wanted a Big Ten network, they'd ask for it, with or without Rutgers. Nobody's sitting there going, oh, well, I guess Rutgers is in the Big Ten. So, yes, please, cable company, please put the Big Ten network so I can watch this trashy football team. Let's get them out of there. Let's get all these other teams out of there and make them earn their way on the field to get in there. Anyways, that's all I got for right now. Stay tuned. Up next from 8 to 9, we're going to do a replay of our morning show. Tomorrow morning, we're going to go a little bit more into Coach Peterson's comments. Loudbeard and I are going to discuss what his comments really mean. We're not going to go over what I just talked about because we don't want to replay that, but we're going to go over that. We're going to go over, the MLB playoff games. We're going to talk a little bit about the Red Wings and how awesome they used to be, how awesome the Bulls used to be, how awesome the Bills used to be, and now they just suck. We're going to talk about that. We're going to try and predict which teams will probably suck that are really good right now in the next 10 or 15 years. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. No, actually, do stay here. Stay tuned. Our replay from this morning is coming up next. See ya.